What's going on, 7th and 8th graders? This is the lesson for the week of January 19th. I hope you guys had a great Martin Luther King Day weekend, a nice long weekend, and we're going to go ahead and get this thing started. Now, we are, of course, on Unit 3, Interactive Animation and Games on code.org, and we, of course, are trying to prepare ourselves at the end of this unit. You're going to be expected to participate in a class project that you create your own animation. So we don't want to skip any lessons. We are on lesson 5 this week, and it is called Variables. Lesson 5, Variables. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click bubble number 1. Now, bubble number 1 is just the overview, the objective question of the day. How can we use variables to store information in our programs? Now, let's look at what the vocab. A variable is a label for a piece of information used in a program. Kind of like a variable in math where you've got solve for X or solve for Y or whatever. The letter is the value, is the variable, and it stands for a number, a mystery number. In the coding world, variable is a label, kind of like the label X. In math, a lot of times, a label for a piece of information used in a program. So very, very similar to the how it's used in math class. All right, let's go. I'm going to go ahead and click continue. See what this variables is all about here. Okay. Now, let's look at number 2 together. Read the code below and make a prediction. Where will the circle be drawn? What will happen if you change the number in line 1? So we've been changing these numbers, and always look at the grid. Showing the grid can be very useful. On this one, we got to type a little bit, make a prediction. What will happen if you change the number in line 1? So this is line 1, okay, right there, and it says variable, and it says X position 50. Look at what the ellipse, it says X position 50. So, in my opinion, that 50 is going to go in this space here, and it's going to be up somewhere in the top, this is just a prediction, the top left corner. Okay, let's try that. I'm wrong. Okay, that's okay. It's actually the bottom left corner because it is X, and I should have spent a little more time. Notice the X value when I hover over the middle of the circle. It is 50. This one is, the Y is 50. Okay? So you got to think, I didn't think about the Y is still 350, so it would be 50, 350. Okay? So that is why that circle is in the bottom left. The 50 goes here because it's the variable, X position. It's labeled that, and we already know the Y. And of course this, the last two numbers, if you've been keeping up, determines how large or how small the circle is. All right, let's go ahead and click finish, continue, and then when we get to level in bubble 3, we got a video introducing what variables are. Let's watch together.
Most apps keep track of pieces of information that change and update as you use the app. For example, a simple game can keep track of your score and the number of lives you have left as you play. Apps utilize the computer's memory to do this, and learning how to use that memory when programming is a really powerful skill. The most common way to leverage a computer's memory is by creating a variable. Now, a variable is just a container for storing a value. And once created, the variable is stored in the computer's memory, and it can be used and updated repeatedly throughout your program. As an example, let's use variables to keep track of the score and the number of lives remaining in a hypothetical game. Creating the variable is really easy. You use the word var followed by a label that you want to give the variable. You can choose any label you want, but it helps to choose a word that describes the variable that you want to store. So let's label our first variable score to keep track of the score. And then we can create a second variable to keep track of lives. Remember these labels. You'll need them later in order to use the variables. We can assign a value to the variable using the equal sign, like this. Let's set our starting score to 0 and our number of lives to 3. Remember, you only need to use the var at the time that you want to create a new variable. A common mistake is to use it every single time you want to refer to a variable. Also, be sure to avoid mixing up the order when you call your variables. The label's got to appear on the left, and the value has to appear on the right, like this, not like this. Often, you'll want to create a variable and assign it a value right away. There's a really convenient way to do this with one line of code. This is sometimes called initializing the variable. It's important to realize that this single line of code is actually doing two things. First, creating the variable, and then second, assigning it a value. Let's take a moment to talk about the equal sign. In many coding language, the equal symbol is called the assignment operator because you use it to assign a value to a variable. And you're probably used to seeing it in math, but in programming it's a little bit different. If you were in math class and you saw this, something would definitely be wrong. Score can't possibly equal both 5 and 7, but this is not math class. With code, a computer is executing a set of instructions, one after the other, so this would just tell the computer to set score to 5, and then on the next line, set it to 7. In an effort to avoid confusion, programmers often don't use the word equals when we see this sign. Instead, they use the phrase gets the value. So when we see a statement like this, we could read it as score gets the value 7, or score gets 7 for short. Some programming languages avoid the confusion entirely by representing the assignment statements with a sideways arrow, like this. To use a variable, you just refer to it by its label. Anywhere the variable name appears in the program, the value currently stored in the variable will be retrieved from memory. The tricky part is that when using a variable, you often can't see visually what its value is. To bypass that problem, you can use console.log to display the value, like this. This is a really handy trick, but remember there's a difference between showing the value of a variable and writing out the variable's label. When text appears in quotes, you're telling the computer to write those literal ASCII characters on the screen, like this. But on the other hand, without quotes, the computer assumes that you're referring to a variable called score, and it will attempt to retrieve its value. If you haven't made that variable, then the computer will give an error.
Okay. So variables, I know he covered a lot, and I know that, and you can rewatch this video, pause it. I know that was a lot to kind of take in and can be confusing. Something that you definitely want to look at is you got to know the variable order, the equal sign, and it's not like the equal sign in a math class. Gets the value. Notice how he used the terms, gets the value. So that can be confusing. So you're going to start there at 4. I'm going to stop talking, let you guys kind of start it. And there are a few challenges along the way. Here's a prediction. You're going to type in. You definitely want to click show grid and just predict what you think is going to happen. It's going to do some skill building, let you practice. When you get to 7, and when you get to 7, there are 4 of those, And yes, you need to do all 4. Number 8 is the assessment to see if how well you got it. You'll have to, of course, read what it says to do. And number 9, these are challenges. So I'm going to help you out with those. Let's see, there are 3. There's really just 3 challenges. You do 2 of the 3. I'm not counting D, a free play. That doesn't count. So you pick 2 of those 3 to do, and you can leave 1 off and be done with lesson number 5, variables. So again, I know this has thrown out a lot of new terms. Feel free to go back and rewatch that video if you need to. Of the gentleman explaining, does a great job, better job than me explaining what variables are. You only have to do 2 challenges at the very end instead of all 3. And as always, shoot me an email if you run into any problems whatsoever. All right, I'm Mr. Noakes, and I'm out.